I can remember being in high school and being very confident about the answer to a test question. And when the teacher gives us the test back and reviews what's going on or why we got these certain questions right or wrong, I put C, the answer ended up being A, but C was the right answer. And so I would go to my teacher and I would say, excuse me, Mrs. Whoever, C is technically correct, so why did I get this question wrong? And she would say, well, C might be right, but it's not the best answer. And that always drove me crazy, and it still drives high school students crazy, even if I knew she was right, even if I could see that A was a better answer than C. But unfortunately for the high school student who's trying to take the ACT English test does the exact same thing. You can have 4 answer choices that are all fine. They're like grammatically correct. They might even communicate the right idea, but one of them is going to be the best. And today what I want to do is get into one of the main reasons why an answer might be better than another, and that's called redundancy. And I'm going to hop over to the iPad here in a second and show you a couple of real examples of this. But as you know, if something is redundant, that means it's being said more than once, or an idea is being communicated more than one time when just one time is sufficient. And that might sound like some kind of rare ACT questions about redundancy, but they are unbelievably common. They're so common that in my book, The ACT English System, I have it under what I call step 2, which is the material that's asked the second most. I pair it with verbosity and redundancy. So this question shows up multiple times every single ACT test. So without further ado, let's hop over to the iPad and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about in the context of real questions. Okay, what we're looking at here is from a free ACT given out by the ACT themselves. It's called Preparing for the ACT. If you do an online search, a Google search or whatever for the phrase Preparing for the ACT, followed by the current year or really any recent year, you're going to find a free ACT test. Okay, so I've got that pulled up, but I also wrote in this sentence right here that says, eventually, I will clean my room at some point. And this is a sentence that I use in my book, The ACT English System, to communicate what I mean by redundant or redundancy. Redundancy isn't always going to look like, a sentence that says something like, the bed was unmade, but it was also unmade, or something like literally the same words repeated twice. That's not going to happen. Instead, you might have an idea that's being communicated, twice, sometimes even in the same sentence, and you've got to recognize that and get rid of any unnecessary ones. So in this sentence that I wrote down, eventually I will clean my room at some point, there's this idea in this sentence that there's a time coming in the future when I will clean my room, right? The problem is the opening adverb eventually communicates that idea, right? That eventually there's going to come a time when I'm going to clean my room. But so does this phrase at the end, at some point, right? Like that little phrase, at some point, it also communicates that there's a time coming when I'm going to clean my room. And so if this sentence actually showed up on the ACT, they would expect you to recognize that this idea is in the sentence twice. And so let's just say that, the first part is underlined, maybe all the way to the comma. They're going to want you to recognize that that needs to be deleted out of the sentence because it is redundant. The way the sentence is written without that word, it already communicates that idea. So here's a good example I found from this old ACT test. It didn't take me long because this is a pretty common question. So here, glowing on an adventure, let's just start at the beginning. As I pulled my camera out of my backpack, I felt a tap on my arm. No photographs, whispered the woman next to me, pointing up to the cave ceiling. The flash will make them stop glowing, she said, whispering. So I want to focus here on number 17, not get distracted by number 16. But we have all these options. A is the way that it's written. B says glowing, she said as she pointed up to the ceiling. C, glowing, she said in a hushed, whispering voice, or just glowing. And I haven't looked up the answer to this question yet, but I'm guaranteeing that the answer there is going to be D, just glowing. And you might think, well, how do you know that so quickly? Well, the reason that I know that is because all these other options are redundant. Let's look at the no change option, which will also eliminate letter choice C. It says, she said, whispering. Okay, this part of the sentence is redundant. It's like, well, how do you know? Like if I read the rest of the sentence, I don't see anything in there about her whispering. It says, the flash will make them stop glowing. She said whispering, so what's wrong with that? It's the sentence before that says that she's whispering right there, huh? So we don't need to say that again. We already know she's whispering. So that's going to eliminate A, no change, and also C, which talks about her speaking in a hushed, whispering voice. So let's eliminate that one as well. Letter B says glowing, she said, as she pointed up to the ceiling. But again, we already know that from the previous sentence. So the previous sentence says, no photographs, whispered the woman next to me, pointing up to the cave ceiling. So we don't need to say that again. That would be redundant. So we know it's not B either. That's why the answer is D. Again, none of these answer choices has a, I guess what you might call a grammatical problem, in the sense that it has no comma problems or, punctuation problems or anything like that. They all work in that sense. There's no verb tense problems. There's no pronoun problems. They all work in that kind of a way. It has one problem. And the one problem is that 3 of these answer choices are redundant. And that makes D not only the best answer, but for the ACT English test, the correct answer. So there you have it. If you're looking for more guided practice into questions of redundancy, and really the ACT English test as a whole in order of importance from most important to least important, then check out my book, The ACT English System. Thanks for tuning in, and God bless.